The hardest moment of my prison sentence didn't happen in court. It didn't happen the day the judge gave me 15 years. It didn't happen the first night the cell door locked behind me. The hardest moment came 3 years later, sitting on the edge of a steel bunk at 5:17 in the morning, when a correctional officer stopped outside my cell and quietly said, "You need to come with me." In prison, you learn very quickly that early morning calls are never good news. I remember walking down the hallway half asleep, hearing the sound of my own footsteps echo against the concrete floor. Nobody spoke. The officer opened the small office door near the control station and handed me the phone. I already felt something heavy in my chest before I even answered it. My sister was crying so hard I could barely understand her words. Then she finally said it. "Mom passed away last night." Everything inside me went silent. I didn't cry immediately. Honestly, I think my brain refused to process it at first. My mother had always felt permanent to me. No matter how badly I messed up my life, she was always there somehow, visiting me, writing letters, sending money she barely had, telling me to keep my faith when I had none left in myself. Mothers have this strange ability to keep loving you even after you give them every reason not to. And I gave her plenty. The worst part wasn't just that she died. It was knowing exactly where I was when it happened. Sitting inside a prison cell because of choices I made myself. My mother spent years defending me to people who had already given up on me. She sat through court hearings, listening to strangers describe her son like he was garbage. She drove hours to visit me inside gray prison walls while pretending she wasn't exhausted. And in the end, when she took her final breath, I wasn't there. That reality crushed me. I kept asking my sister the same question over and over. When's the funeral? Deep down, I already knew the answer wouldn't matter. Because prison doesn't stop for grief. People outside prison think inmates automatically get permission to attend funerals. That's not how reality works, especially not for violent offenders. There are security classifications, restrictions, paperwork, transportation issues. To the system, grief becomes procedure. I filed the request anyway. For 2 straight days, I waited for an answer that never really came. I barely slept, barely ate. Every minute felt heavier than the last because somewhere outside those walls, my family was preparing to bury my mother while I sat powerless inside a cage. Then finally, a counselor called me into the office. Request denied. 2 words. That was it. I remember nodding like I understood, but honestly, something inside me broke in that moment. Not anger, not outrage, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness that happens when consequences stop feeling theoretical and become painfully personal. I went back to my cell and stared at the wall for hours. Other inmates tried offering condolences, but there's nothing anyone can really say when a man realizes he lost his final chance to see his mother because of his own decisions. That's the detail people miss about prison. Your sentence punishes everybody connected to you too. My mother had health problems for years before she died. Diabetes, heart complications, stress that only got worse after my arrest. And even though nobody directly blamed me for her death, I blamed myself anyway. Because stress changes people. Pain changes people. Worry changes people. And my mother carried all three because of me. The day of the funeral was one of the longest days of my life. I knew exactly what time the service started because my sister told me beforehand. While my family stood around my mother's casket saying goodbye, I was sitting alone on a prison bunk, staring at a gray wall, trying to imagine the room in my head. I pictured the flowers, her favorite church songs, my relatives crying. I pictured the empty seat where I should have been standing, and the worst thought kept repeating inside my mind. My mother spent her whole life showing up for me, but when she was buried, I couldn't show up for her. Prison changes the way memories feel. They become sharper somehow, more painful. After my mother died, little things started replaying in my head constantly. Her standing at the kitchen stove cooking dinner after long work shifts. Her waking me up for school when I pretended to be sick. Her sitting in the courtroom during sentencing, holding tissues with shaking hands, while still trying to smile at me like everything would somehow be okay. That's what mothers do. They protect you emotionally even when they're breaking themselves. Growing up, my mother worked 2 jobs most of her life. We weren't rich. We struggled constantly. But I never understood how much pressure she carried until I became an adult myself. She sacrificed everything, trying to keep me away from the streets. And the sad part is, she saw the warning signs before anybody else did. She knew the people I was hanging around with were dangerous. She knew my anger was getting worse. She begged me so many times to slow down before I destroyed my future. I didn't listen. That's another painful truth about prison. Most of us ignored people who genuinely loved us while chasing approval from people who disappeared the second life got hard. The final conversation I had with my mother still haunts me. It happened during visitation about 2 months before she died. She looked tired that day, older, smaller somehow. But she still smiled the moment she saw me walk into the room. Before the visit ended, she grabbed my hands across the table and said, "Promise me you'll come home different." At the time, I told her I would. But now I live with the guilt of never getting the chance to prove it to her. Grief inside prison is different from grief in the outside world. Out there, people mourn together. Families hug each other. Friends gather. Memories are shared. But inside prison, grief becomes isolation. After count time ends and the lights dim, you sit alone with your thoughts while the rest of the world continues moving without you. That's when the guilt gets loudest. There were nights after my mother died when I stayed awake until morning, replaying every disappointment I ever caused her. Every lie, every arrest, every broken promise. And the hardest part wasn't remembering my crimes. It was remembering how many chances she gave me before those crimes ever happened. People think unconditional love feels comforting. Sometimes it feels crushing instead. Because my mother never stopped believing there was still good inside me, even after I stopped believing it myself. Years later, I still struggle with one specific memory. During one prison visit, my mother brought old family photos with her. Pictures from birthdays, school events, holidays. She pointed at one photo of me as a little kid and laughed while saying, "You were so sweet back then." I remember smiling at the time, but now that sentence destroys me. Because somewhere along the way, I became someone she barely recognized, even though she never stopped loving me anyway. If you've still got your mother in your life, call her. Seriously, put your pride aside, put your distractions aside, because one day there will come a moment when you'd give absolutely anything just to hear her voice one more time. Prison taught me a lot about consequences, but missing my mother's funeral taught me something even deeper. Time doesn't wait for broken people to fix themselves. You always think there will be another visit, another conversation, another chance to make someone proud, until suddenly there isn't. That's the cruelest part of regret. It arrives after opportunities disappear. I've accepted responsibility for my crimes. I don't blame the prison system for denying my request. The truth is simple. I created the circumstances that kept me from saying goodbye. My sentence didn't steal that moment from me. My choices did. And that reality stays with me every single day. People ask sometimes what the worst punishment in prison really is. For me, it wasn't isolation. It wasn't violence. It wasn't losing years of freedom. It was sitting alone in a prison cell while my mother was lowered into the ground, knowing she spent her entire life loving me, and I never got the chance to say goodbye one last time.